morning, everyone. My name is Emily Hemingway, and I am the Executive Director of TechSTL. And I want to welcome you all to the presentation of the IT Labor Market Report. First, a little bit of background information on who we are, TechSTL. So we're the organization that sponsored the report. We are the newly established Tech Council here in St. Louis. We launched just this spring, and our job is to support the 15-county bi-state region in improving the overall health of the innovation pipeline. And so that ranges from everything to supporting STEM education in the public schools, addressing last-mile broadband, to also supporting the tech talent pipeline and innovation-focused businesses. So we've got a big job ahead of us. We are building this plane as we take it off, being a brand new organization, and one of the first major steps that we had to take was establishing the data benchmarks. One of the big questions that we get is, when you say TechSTL, what do you mean? What does tech mean to TechSTL? And so this report was that first major definition of really qualifying what does technology mean to us and what are the spaces that we are actively serving. So we are a 501c6 membership-based organization. We have our first 100 members, and our goal is to have 1,000 by the end of the year. Members are anything from a small business to a nonprofit to a government agency to a university or a hospital. So really, it's an organization that has some sort of involvement or investment in technology within the community. But we also have two 501c3s. So we recently launched the TechSTL Foundation, which is both of the 501c3s are hosted in partnership with the St. Louis Community Foundation. The foundation is focused on awarding competitive grants to support the business ecosystem as well as the workforce development community. And we are actively fundraising now. Our goal is to be able to release our first competitive grants in early 2023. We've also launched the TechSTL Scholarship Foundation, which is focused on diversifying the STEM education pipeline and awarding scholarships from everything from apprenticeships and certificates and credentialing to 2-year and 4-year degrees. We will prioritize residents of the St. Louis Metro, as well as we will be awarding scholarships for schools that are within our 15-county region. So our biggest focus here is making it easier for women and people of color, for rural students and veterans, LGBTQ, and foreign-born students from the St. Louis region to be able to easily access STEM-related education across the region. So our core mission is to support the data economy, right? So and that's what you're going to see in this IT report, is really defining what are the spaces that we are actively supporting, and not only in IT but also in the emerging technology sectors. We are focused on connecting partners and investing in infrastructure, as well as building the networks across the region in order to make St. Louis a more vibrant innovation hub. So our big vision for this community is to make St. Louis the most diverse innovation hub by 2027. That's in 5 years, less than 5 years. This is a big, ambitious goal, but it's also a transformative goal. Because in order to reach this goal, we have to have systemic change across multiple spaces, that we have to repair pipelines and programs and investments across the region so that we are removing the barriers to access for people who can step in and help build our tech talent and tech workforce, as well as diversify the innovation entrepreneurs and tech leaders across the region. So as you can see on this slide, we have our big 5 goals, and that's what are listed in red. These are what we've identified through this process as being the 5 goals that will help us to reach these milestones. The first big goal is to double our tech workforce. So this IT report was the first time that we were able to really quantify what is the current size of the tech workforce for the MSA. And Howard is going to talk to you about why that is often challenging. The IT and data economy space is somewhat of a moving target, even when you're talking about the federal government and how they are measuring this. But so what we've seen is that for St. Louis to be a competitive innovation hub, we need to have twice as many in our tech workforce and then hit the second goal, which is hit 50% diversity. So what we're seeing over and over again with the leading innovation hubs across the country is that the top most successful cities around innovation and technology are the most diverse, almost 1-to-1. The most diverse cities have the highest GDP. St. Louis has untapped potential in our community in leveraging the fact that we have such a highly diverse population and making sure that we are investing in the opportunity and the pathways that it takes for those to be able to access the economic mobility and the tech opportunity that they have in pursuing these jobs. So the third of the 5 goals is, if we want to 2x our output, we want to double the number of workers in our workforce, we would need to basically 5x our input. And so what we're doing across the region is we're working with all of the partners who are in the pipeline of innovation and helping them identify what would it require for them to serve 5 times as many people. Right? How are we improving the programs that they have, the resources that they need, and being able to scale that system so that we are ultimately turning out 2 times as many graduates. The last 2 goals that we have are focused more on entrepreneurship than workforce development, which is the other side of innovation. And so our 2 big goals there are to support 500 new tech startups. And this is looking at it through the perspective of supporting the ecosystem in order to generate more tech startups. The TechSTL is not trying to be the sole organization that is supporting these programs, that we're trying to really elevate and invest in the full ecosystem of programs across the region so that we have a healthy pipeline that is supporting tech startups as well as diverse founders as they are launching these companies. And then the last piece is around access to capital. So especially in the emerging technology spaces, supporting revolutionary tech is extremely challenging because you are looking at technology that most of our investor network doesn't fully understand, right? It's frontline tech, and it's often beyond the risk threshold of our investment community. And so what we've identified is to really start making that more of a viable space for startups in St. Louis is we have to address the gap in seed capital. So how are we launching a founders fund that is engaging seasoned tech founders, the people who are most knowledgeable around these emerging technologies, to help advise around early stage investment in these startups? So ultimately, we are trying to position St. Louis as a hub for these things. We've identified our big 15 emerging technologies, which you'll see on the side, and these are the 15 niche sectors that have the most potential here in St. Louis. Some of them are obvious, right, are leading industries like ag tech and biotech and geospatial. Some of them are more nascent and are just becoming more viable here in the community through programs at universities or through startup clusters that are already here. So what we're committing to do for TechSTL is that we are advocating on behalf of these big 15, that we're investing in these spaces as well as across the region around how we can help reach these goals and how we help elevate our partner network to identify the gaps and seek out the funding and programming and capacity building that we need in order to reach them. So our strategy is to work beyond the silos. One of the things that came up most often in our research is the word fragmentation. Everybody in St. Louis wanted to talk about how the city is built around fragmented authority and programming, that it's really difficult to get these groups to work together. And so what we're focusing on is building what's called an innovation superhighway. And that is where, so initially, the model is when you've got a lot of fragmentation, you tend to have these same sectors, the education, government, economic development, workforce development, they tend to work in isolation, and they only collaborate when they absolutely have to. So what we're proposing is to start first with a hub and spoke model, where TechSTL is able to help bridge the relationships between all of these spaces. But ultimately, our goal is for us not to be the conduit. A healthy ecosystem of innovation has more of a superhighway model, because ultimately we want the power to live with the people, that they are able to navigate from job to job, from industry to industry, from going from a job to a startup, that ultimately they're able to navigate seamlessly throughout the community, and that partnership is happening all the time, and that you don't need an organization like TechSTL to facilitate that. That is the ultimate goal. We recognize that that takes time. It takes partnership building. It takes building trust. In a community that has had so much fragmentation for so long, the distrust tends to be the biggest roadblock. And so what we're working on is using data to build these bridges, investing in the resources that we need in order to make these partnerships work, and then supporting the relationship building that we need in order to build that trust across the region. So in our strategic plan that we just released, our 5x5 blueprint, we outline the 3 phases that we've looked at of how we tackle this in order to reach these goals in 5 years. Our phase 1 is looking at through the end of 2023. Our top priorities for 2023 are focusing on 2 main things. That's investing in infrastructure, so looking at the critical digital infrastructure and data framework that we need across the region in order to make this a seamless transition, as well as invest in expanding the networks to build more inclusive and comprehensive networks so that we can start breaking down these silos. We recognize that without building stronger infrastructure and without building stronger networks, the programs and capacity can't happen. And so our big goal over the next year is now to fundraise in order to make these things become more of a reality across the region so that then we can shift gears and start looking at investing in capacity building and programming. The other exciting piece is that in 2023 we are hoping to be able to fundraise so that we can officially open the foundation and the scholarships and start releasing those funds across the region.